Number 10. Deadpool. Deadpool has gone through phases where he was fully cured of his power set and even pretty once more in the comics, like back during Daniel Way's Deadpool run, looking completely normal but without his healing factor. But the most startling shift when it comes to Deadpool's appearance has to be between his on-screen adaptations. That's right, we're talking about the comparison between Deadpool's cinematic debut in the X-Men Origins Wolverine film and his own self-titled film franchise. Although oddly enough, both roles feature him played by Ryan Reynolds. The two adaptations could not be more different. Thankfully in Deadpool 2, Wade manages to fix Cable's temporal dial. Using this device to time travel, Wade is not only able to save Vanessa, who initially died at the beginning of that film, but is also able to clean up the timelines by killing the previous version of himself, who is also known as Weapon 11. It should also be noted that in X-Men Origins Wolverine, Deadpool appeared fully as a villain, as opposed to the lovable mess of an anti-hero we've come to know him as within his own film franchise. Number 9. Raquel. I never know how to say this name, but I'm pretty sure it's like Raquel. How do you say Skrull names? That's the question. For some reason, probably because she had been gone so long, Raquel, aka the Skrull Empress, aka Emperor Doric VIII / Hulkling / Teddy Altman's grandmother, was completely unrecognized when she returned. Raquel was revealed to be alive and well, and also sleuthing it up as she impersonated T'Nolth the Pursuer, an elite member of the Kree forces. And apparently Raquel had been impersonating T'Nolth so long she had in essence created her persona and basically was her. Raquel had actually been plotting and planning in secret, putting in place all the pieces to bring together the Kree and Skrull Empire, uniting them in an alliance in order to ensure her grandson was the one to rule over the now allied empire, as we saw in Empire. That's the name of the event, so not to be redundant. It was an empire, but it's spelled empire with a Y because it's a whole other thing. And yet when she was revealed in that event to be the one revealed as the Skrull pretending to be T'Nolth, many Marvel fans actually needed to crack open their comic history books and review just who exactly she was, with many people mistaking her for Veronki, the Skrull Queen. But yes, this is Raquel. She was believed to have died when the Skrull homeworld perished along with her daughter Princess Enel, as their world was devoured by Galactus. She made her first appearance in the Fantastic Four original series in issue 206 and was believed to have perished in issue 257. But she didn't, she was still alive, and then she came back years later and everyone went, who is that? What? Veronki? What? Not Veronki, two different people. Number 8. Craven the Hunter. You might think you recognize Craven, but do you really? After all, the current Craven that you've seen turning up in the current Beyond storyline of the Amazing Spider-Man series is actually none other than Craven's last son. Well, his last clone son, anyway. This clone of Craven was given the name of Last Son after he hunted down all his other brothers, his other clone brothers, who had also been trained by Sergei Kravinoff, the Craven himself. As such, this clone of Craven was named his true heir, and since then has also taken up the mantle of Craven the Hunter. So while he may look like Craven, albeit a younger version of him, this Craven the Hunter is not actually the original. So I guess this is a character that you would recognize, but in so doing you'd be wrong, which means I guess you didn't really recognize him then, did you? This version of Craven made his first appearance in the current run of The Amazing Spider-Man, which started in 2018, first appearing back in issue 16 as the Last Son. Number 7. Xemnu. Xemnu made his first appearance in Journey into Mystery in issue number 62. We learned that Xemnu was actually a prisoner and a criminal who was retrieved and accidentally revived by a human and electrician named Joe Harper. Xemnu would go on to become known as Xemnu the Living Hulk, and would also prove to be a powerful cosmic, psionic, and all-around bizarre enemy to the Hulk and the Hulk family in time. Initially, he clashed with the original superhero powerhouse team known as the Defenders. Xemnu in his first appearance has brownish or reddish fur, but currently has reappeared in the comics with white fur, making him look kind of like a space yeti. You may not recognize him because you forgot him, or because he's just so weird, or it could be just because of this change when it comes to, you know, his overall fur color. But yeah, he's got different, I guess he dyed his fur? I don't know. What happened there? Number 6. Norman Osborn. Well, you might currently recognize Norman Osborn in terms of his appearance. When it comes to his actions and his alignment, You might not. And in modern comics, Norman has also gone through a couple dramatic redesigns and makeovers in recent history. At one point, Norman gets plastic surgery to completely change his facial appearance, reinventing himself as Mason Banks and becoming the head of Alchemax. There's even an unmasked point where we were all kind of like, wait, who's that? And then he's like, I changed my face, but it's me, Norman Osborne, aka also Mason Banks. He also has been the head of Hammer and his own Dark Avengers, and for a time posed as their version of Iron Man, tarnishing the mantle of Iron Patriot, and more recently, a depowered Norman bonded with the Carnage symbiote, allowing himself to use the Goblin Serum once more, but ultimately being driven insane by that whole experience and believing himself to actually be Prime Carnage host and serial killer Cletus Cassidy. Now sane again, however, and seemingly purified by the Sin Eater, currently in the comics, Norman is on a path of redemption, having gained a new lease on life and being cured of his usual villainous intentions. Or so it would seem. I never trust Norman, but that's what's up currently. Number 5. Galactus. One villain who recently got a very mummy-inspired looking makeover was Galactus during his time in Thor's latest series as written by Donny Cates. Here in the first arc of the 2020 Thor series, referred to as Volume 6 overall of Thor, Thor takes on the immensely powerful cosmic entity known as the Black Winter. Because the Black Winter is so powerful, Thor is forced to team up with Galactus to defeat it. Unfortunately, he also learns that Galactus is actually kind of a herald for the Black Winter. FYI, that is just how powerful of a force the Black Winter is. He has Galactus as a herald. After devouring 5 planets to bolster his own power, Galactus has this power stripped from him by Thor upon this revelation. Thor leaves Galactus drained of the power cosmic, wrinkled, and de-armored, even taking Galactus's helmet as a trophy, using it as the entrance to his throne room. So while you might have recognized him previously, Galactus then got super upgraded and now is very mummified and also very dead. Oof. Number 4. Onslaught. Onslaught initially was a villain with a mysterious background. Despite the fact the powerful villain looked a ton like Magneto and seemed to pack a psionic powerhouse of abilities that echoed an evil Professor X, the character's true identity as really both of those mutants wouldn't be confirmed till after his initial appearance. When Onslaught appeared again, it was in a similar vein, and while the symbol of Onslaught might be similar, this time around when it came to the character's identity, they were even less recognizable, as it was explained that basically all the mutants of Krakoa were, in a way, Onslaught, and that Onslaught was able to exist through their constant resurrections. So while you might recognize the look of Onslaught when they returned, their true identity was even more of a mystery than the first time around, and their final form that we saw during X-Men The Onslaught Revelation was pretty wild as well, getting a bit of an update to match even the current character designs of what an amalgamated Charles and Eric would look like currently. I like that that version of Onslaught has like the black suit now, the tight black suit that Charles wears. It's a look. Number 3. One Below All. I think one of the biggest revelations of modern comics was learning that even a being as good as the One Above All, who is basically considered to be like Marvel God, has a dark side. The One Below All ended up being a major villain in the Immortal Hulk series, and we later learned that their power actually came from one of the most divine and good beings in the Marvel universe, the One Above All. The One Below All is like the Hulk for the One Above All. In other words, their darker and much more destructive other half. So while you might know the One Above All and you might know the One Below All, I bet you'd be surprised to learn that they were actually directly connected to one another. They can't exist without the other, especially given how different in appearance and alignment they both are. But this revelation was also super powerful and fitting for a series that was really all about forgiving and reconciling the darker side of the Hulk, the Hulks, and ultimately of humanity and our own individual selves. After all, we all have like a little bit of a Hulk side to us. Number 2. Killmonger. If you go on far enough back, Eric Killmonger easily becomes one of Marvel's villains you would not soon recognize. And that goes both ways. Whether we're talking about more recent fans looking back in comic history to his first appearance in Jungle Action, volume number 2, or whether we're talking about his initial fans looking at his modern MCU adaptation and comic redesign, which obviously takes inspiration from the MCU version of Eric. Killmonger made his first appearance in the second volume of Jungle Action from the 1970s in issue number 6, and even from that front cover, he just looks like really different. Here, Eric does not sport any self-created bodily scars marking his kills, but instead comes with a lot of spiky accessories, including what appears to be a spike belt, which he uses as a weapon to fight against his foe and his rival, Black Panther. All the spikes. Now he's got scars, but back then he had spikes. Number 1. The Leader. I doubt after all this time if the Leader even really recognizes himself, considering what he looks like now. Following the events of Immortal Hulk, the Leader is left no longer a supervillain, but just a guy. Throughout the course of the series, we saw the Leader only grow more evil and more powerful, it seemed. He was eventually basically influenced or possessed by the one below all, the most powerful of all Hulk-related baddies, and possibly the baddest of the bad just in general. However, after the two beings were separated from one another, Stearns was left as just a man, returned to normal. The Hulk decided to forgive the Leader, and he returned back to the Earth with all the other Hulks and Bruce Banner. It's been a long time, but Sam Stearns is no longer the Leader, at least not currently in the comics. I mean, he could return to being the Leader at some point. Instead, Samuel Stearns is just Samuel Stearns. Number 10. Super Skrull. Kl'rt might be recognizable when it comes to his character design, which admittedly has not changed that much over the years, but when it comes to his alignment, you might be somewhat surprised to learn where he is now, from where he started. Super Skrull Kl'rt made his first appearance in Fantastic Four issue 18. Once again, the Skrulls attempted to invade Earth and planned on defeating the FF, this time with their secret weapon, the Super Skrull, who seemed to possess all of the Fantastic Four's powers. Unfortunately, Mr. Fantastic and the team realized that these powers were likely not Super Skrull's own, and suspected in fact that they were delivered to him from the Skrull homeworld. They used a device to jam the signal that was giving Kl'rt his powers, defeating him. Currently in the comics, Kl'rt serves Emperor Hulkling, and was for a time one of his trusted advisors. Kl'rt, however, was also the one who killed Hulkling's foster mother. Recently in Empire Aftermath, Kl'rt felt so awful about his past that he actually offered his life to the Emperor. Hulkling refused to accept it though, instead preferring to make Kl'rt work in the area of diplomacy so that he might make amends for all the lives that he had taken in times of war. He was like, no. Instead, you gotta save lives, and hopefully that'll make up for it. You can't just die on me, Kl'rt. Number 9. Hell's Bells. Hell's Bells was a group of villains who were all female mutants. The team was originally assembled by Cyber, who trained all of its members and consisted of Shrew, Briquette, Flame, Tremolo, and Vague. When Shrew betrayed them by testifying against them in order to get immunity for herself, the Hell's Bells banded together in an attempt to get revenge on her for betraying them. Eventually, they would be successfully taken into custody by X-Factor. Following the events of M-Day and Decimation, all team members save Briquette found themselves completely depowered. They still have operated as criminals in the comics, appearing in the Children of Atom series most recently, but they were a lot less scary because they had to rely on equipment and gadgets in place of, their own powers. Even without their powers, the team mainly stuck together though, minus Briquette and obviously Shrew. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want even more lists about Marvel villains you might not recognize or something in that realm, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Silver Samurai. While Silver Samurai looks much the same in the comics as he always has, not every iteration of him has been so recognizable. We've seen him turn up here and there on Krakoa recently. He seems to enjoy watching and participating in the friendly single combat matches in the Quarry, and in modern comics, he's recognizable. But how about in modern film? Well, Silver Samurai might not be a main character in Fox's mutant universe, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't exist. He actually made an appearance in the 2013 film The Wolverine. But although here he also seemingly looked the same, when it came to his armor at least, he couldn't be further from his comic book counterpart in actuality. That's because Silver Samurai here was an adamantium robot whom Wolverine had to battle against. Yeah, they made Keniyukio Harada robot armor. He was at least piloted by Ikiro Yoshida, who is obviously that film's version of Ken's own father in the comics. So, at least there was a little bit of a thing, but still, he wasn't even a person. He was just robot armor. Like, Rude. Ken is a whole person, okay? It's not just armor. Number 7, Forearm. Forearm is Michael McCain. Originally, Michael was part of Strife's Mutant Liberation Front. He was one of the founding members, but would end up defeated by those that fought against him. Despite generally being on the side of the villains, Forearm was also welcomed onto the mutant island nation of Krakoa, where he could have a fresh start for himself. He accepted the offer and would end up joining Sword and being seen as a member of Magic's Dark Riders, who I think should get their own book. However, on Krakoa, he looks a bit different from his initial appearance, where he decidedly was showing a lot more forearm and had much less shirt. Forearm's mutant power is that he has 4 arms. Get it? Get it? His 4 arms. And now he wears shirts. Good for you, Forearm. Good for you. Although you can also not wear a shirt. You can not wear a shirt if you don't want to wear a shirt. Like, I'm not going to pressure anyone to wear shirts if they don't want to, or vice versa. I'm not going to pressure anyone to like not wear a shirt if they're like, I like my shirt, let me keep my shirt. But I do like his new design as well. His new outfit is pretty cool. Number 6, Thanos. Thanos might look very similar to his initial appearance in the comics, and also looks quite similar on the big screen, but he's seen a pretty big change when it comes to what he's up to recently. In the comics, that is. In the MCU, he's mainly dead and gone, but there is a chance perhaps that he could return. Who knows? Not only have we now met Star Fox or Eros in the MCU, but in the comics, Thanos has become the new Prime Eternal, and as such, their new leader. That's right, this guy just went from being the baddest supervillain around to leader of a superhero team. Although we'll have to see where the Eternals' alignment is in the comics following the events of Avengers vs. X-Men vs. Eternals War, because that's probably going to be crazy. Also, I don't even know what the Eternals is really doing in that mix, but I'm here for it. I'm here to check that out. Number 5, Rhino. Rhino was given a completely new look for his appearance in the second Amazing Spider-Man film. Honestly, Rhino is a hard villain to do in live action, I feel like, so I'm not surprised with the direction that they went with, but also, what a weird direction to go in for that character, considering what they're actually supposed to be like in the comics. In the comics, Rhino is Alexei Sistovich, who is genetically altered and then bonded to a suit of armor that increases his strength and durability. Basically, he's given like a mechanical rhino skin, but like the skin. The armor was modeled after a rhinoceros, as they are known in nature for being relentless when it comes to their assault and extremely hard to defeat due to their tough hide. Rhino, however, has never been known for being very smart, which makes him fairly easy to defeat usually, which seems to be the same idea when it came to his cinematic counterpart. However, the whole design for this character was definitely different than the comic book counterpart, whose armor was much less mech-like or robotic and is more like just the tough hide of a rhino. Really, he kind of just looks like a guy in a rhino suit in the comics. Also, Alexei is just super jacked in the comics, and his cinematic counterpart didn't seem so jacked. He was just like a guy in a suit. Of course, Alexei does get a lot of his jackedness as well from his whole rhino thing, but he also, I think, was jacked still to begin with. I'm pretty sure. He's just more jacked. Number 4, Legion. Legion has a new look in X-Men Onslaught Revelation. This one-shot is kind of like the bookend for the Way of X limited series if you were checking that out, which I personally haven't read all of, but I will say the parts of it that I have read have been strictly excellent, so I would recommend Way of X to anyone that's interested. If you like the idea of pondering the why in life and beliefs, and you enjoy philosophical prose, this is really a great series for you. In Onslaught Revelation, Nightcrawler, Legion, Pixie, and Dust come together to try and defeat the resurrected Onslaught, who has been slowly returning with each resurrection, residing as pieces in the minds of all mutants. In order to help in the fight against Onslaught, Legion makes his mind a safe space for all mutants to come through, in essence also fully connecting with Krakoa and kind of becoming a sort of hive mind if necessary. As such, he gets a redesign, though he still gets to keep the wild shape of his hair that we've all come to recognize so well, and that I've really come to love. Legion, moving forward after the defeat of Onslaught, will also keep this look as he becomes the newly created religion's church. That's right, Legion is the church. He's the building. In essence, people can come into his mind to worship, find community, and seek sanctuary. It's like a nice safe space for people to come and just like be and feel good. It's awesome. I love that Legion is the church. I just think that's great. Number 3, Donald Blake. Donald Blake ended up becoming a villain recently in the comics, which is a pretty big change for a guy who was once also the mighty hero Thor. Donald Blake used to be Thor's human form, but in reality was kind of his own person, or he kind of ended up becoming his own person. He was created by Odin to be a human host for Thor, but after Thor died at the hands of the Serpent, Blake became separated from Thor and became his own separate entity. Eventually, he would end up going to the Enchantress for help, only for her to use him to make her own villainous creature referred to as the Keep. Basically, she killed Donald Blake and then used his blood to make the Keep, and we haven't seen the Keep in a while, but I'm sure he's out there somewhere. After Amora and the Keep were defeated by Thor, Blake was laid to rest, living on as a disembodied head in a dream world that was crafted for him. Well, living on as a person in the dream world, but he was just a disembodied head. But he was asleep, so he was dreaming. Eventually, though, Blake came to realize that this world wasn't real, and awoke from his dream, seeking revenge on all Thors across the multiverse for what had happened to him. And don't worry, he wasn't just a head then, he had a body then. He would end up being defeated by 616 Thor in the end, and then made into the God of Lies, as per Thor's brother Loki's suggestion. Thor was like, what do we do with this guy? We shouldn't kill this guy. He's Donald Blake. Loki's like, nah, let's make him the God of Lies. Seems to fit considering everything Donald Blake has been through. Number 2, Taskmaster. Taskmaster is Anthony Masters and is known for being an unstoppable foe. He can master pretty much any skill he can observe. Some would say he's a taskmaster, which makes him a deadly opponent. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we were also introduced to Taskmaster, but the character was changed somewhat for the film in which they were introduced, Black Widow. Instead, Antonia Dreykov, the daughter of General Dreykov, the man behind the Red Room, was Taskmaster. When Black Widow left the Red Room and became an Avenger, she believed she had killed Dreykov, sadly also having to kill his daughter, who basically led them to their target. She was a casualty of the explosion, intended to kill Dreykov himself. Instead, Antonia was actually badly injured and ended up surviving, but her face was permanently scarred. She then became Dreykov's weapon, having studied the moves of the Avengers and having their fighting styles basically uploaded into her brain, allowing her to mimic all their various moves and making her a hard opponent for Black Widow to defeat. Quite different from the comic book version, but still really cool and badass as an alternate version of the character, I think. Number 1, Cyber. Cyber has come a long way when it comes to his look in the comics. Granted, Cyber has also come back a lot of times, so I guess it kind of makes sense that he would look different. He made his first appearance in Marvel Comics Presents in issue 85 in the 90s, where he was introduced to us as a cyborg-appearing Wolverine villain who was hired by General Koi, another enemy of Logan's. Back then, he was just a smile and a coat with a hat on. Currently, however, his design is much different, and he doesn't even go by the name Cyber anymore, instead being known as Hornet in the comics in his newest body. Number 10, Bishop. As some of you pointed out in the comments on the part 1 of this list, a lot of 90s characters, especially 90s X-Men, have completely different looks in the modern day when compared with their 90s appearances. Lucas Bishop is definitely one such character. Although he still has his M tattoo over his eye and a few details in his costume that pay homage to his original look, Bishop has definitely seen some changes, some of which might be so great that fans may not at first recognize him. While he still often is seen with his XSE guns and even still sports a red bandana, Bishop is now a member of the Marauders. Gone are the days of those 90s X-Men colors, and modern day Bishop dresses mainly in reds and blacks, in homage as well to his role as the Hellfire Trading Company's Red Bishop. Also, I love that Bishop is the Red Bishop because he's a bishop and his name's Bishop, it's crazy. Number 9, Crystal. Crystal's initial appearance had her recognizable mainly by her ginger or strawberry blonde hair and a simple white dress. I personally always thought of Crystal as being ginger, but then I see so many different versions of her where she has like maybe blonde hair. So I don't know, but I've always thought of her as a ginger. She is known for being the younger sister of Medusa, who is the Inhuman Queen and true love of Black Bolt. Crystal has had a few different looks, but generally she has longer ginger hair and is either in a yellow suit or a Fantastic Four suit when she was, you know, on that team. She has been known for dating Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, was once married to Quicksilver and had a daughter with him, and she was even for a time married to Ronan the Accuser. Yeah, it's been an interesting dating history, I feel like, for Crystal. All in all, Crystal has had a sort of wild life, and while her costume has changed gradually, comparing her short blonde-haired self in her yellow and black diamond suit to her first appearance with long ginger-like hair in her white dress, looks like a dress to me, and you might not know it's Crystal at first glance. And friends, if you want even more lists where we talk about all the glow-ups in comics and I guess some of the glow-downs, if that's a thing, be sure to let us know that you love this list by giving it a thumbs up. Number 8. Pyro. Pyro might be sporting a very similar suit when it comes to how he looked in his first appearance, but he also now has a skull tattoo. A full face skull tattoo. And honestly, I have come to love it. Not only that, but this version of Pyro was also originally known as a villain, and like many on the island nation of Krakoa, has been given a new lease on life where he no longer needs to be a villain. Instead, recently, Pyro has exclusively acted as a hero, fighting alongside his shipmates and teammates, the Marauders. During his time with the Marauders team, St. John Allardyce ended up taking refuge with his fellow teammates in a tattoo parlor. A few of them decided to get tats while they were there, Pyro included. He decided to get a full face tattoo, getting a black skull tattooed over top his face. And I gotta say, it's just been growing on me more and more every time I read Marauders. At first, after he got this tat, I was expecting, like so many other Krakoans, that Pyro would end up dying and then being resurrected, erasing the tattoo from his face. After all, who needs tattoo removal when you have resurrection protocols, and mutants dying and returning is no longer really a big deal at all. Although I'm sure the healing gardens could remove Pyro's tattoo almost as easily. Still, he hasn't gotten it removed or died and been brought back without it yet, so while you might wonder who that is with the skull face tattoo, it seems that it's becoming part of Pyro's modern day look quite seamlessly. So maybe in 10 years from now we'll be like, oh yeah, it's Pyro because the skull face tattoo. Maybe he'll still have it. Number 7. Flash Thompson, or as he's currently known, Agent Anti-Venom. Still, it's pretty wild to think that Flash Thompson, aka Eugene Thompson, started out as Peter Parker's bully back in the day. Flash has come a long way from being an antagonist to a friend of Peter's to a full-on war hero and later superhero. He's battled alcoholism, became an amputee, and even traveled into space where he fought alongside the Guardians of the Galaxy. If you only knew Flash from his first appearance, or vice versa, you only knew him from modern day comics, you'd probably be shocked to see just how different the character is, how far he has come, and how much he has grown and evolved. He even became such a popular character among fans that he got to join the Resurrection Club, being returned to life recently after dying during the fight against Red Goblin. Number 6. Cable. In recent years, Cable has had a completely new look, considering that his old version died and was replaced with his younger version. Of course, his older version has since returned, but there was a good amount of time there in the comics when you might have been confused as to just who exactly you were reading about. Is Kid Cable meant to be Nathan's son, you might have thought, or is he some like de-aged version of Nathan Summers? Well, the latter is the correct assumption if you made it. Young Cable actually hunted his older self down, in essence completing his time loop. But of course, the old man still existed out there, and if you went to the right point and place in time, he would still be living earlier portions of his life. As such, we were able to bring Old Man Cable back in the comics, and young Cable actually realized that he would also have to leave and let the old man basically take over, as while he thought he knew it all, young and all, that's what young people usually think. They think they know it all. It turns out he still has lots to learn. Honestly though, I love both versions of Cable, and I wish that old Cable could team up with his younger self on more occasions. I want like a Kid Cable and Old Man Cable team up comic. Number 5. Speedball, or as he was known for a good amount of time in the comics, Penance. Robert Baldwin initially got his powers after a lab experiment went awry. After being exposed to extra-dimensional radiation, Robbie found that when he was the target of a certain amount of force, his body would transform. Instead of him being harmed from said blow, he would produce a protective barrier, causing him to become basically like a human bouncy ball. He He could use this energy to then shield others, blast opponents, or to even halt speeding projectiles in midair. Speedball would later join the New Warriors. However, later on he would be part of an incident at the center of the First Civil War, where 612 civilians were killed, including 60 children. This would prompt him to change in appearance and in mindset, becoming Penance, a spiky armored version of the character who had internal spikes in his suit to remind him of all the victims lost, as he felt personally responsible for their deaths. Speedball has since returned to his original appearance, but it has taken him time to recover both physically and mentally from his time as Penance. And he's kinda still on that road to recovery. He was Penance for a long time. Number 4. Angel. Angel is another mutant superhero who has gone through a ton of different looks in life. Most notably was his shift from having organic wings to techno-organic wings after he lost his organic wings when he became one of Apocalypse's horsemen. The crazy thing is that while Angel seems to appear as mostly his original version, there are times where you might be confused with him as to who is who, as he seems to kind of alternate right now in modern comics between his original form and his techno-organic form, Archangel. As far as I can tell, this hasn't been fully explained yet in the comics, though it has been acknowledged that this happens in a similar manner to his X-Corp partner, Monet. That is, when he gets more emotional or gets more angry, his techno-organic form seems to come out. This was alluded to at the end of issue 2 of X-Corp, their Hellfire Gala issue. And if there have been more explanations on this and I missed them, please feel free to tell me what issues I should in-depth read, because yeah, I feel like there's little details, but we haven't gotten like a full, here's how it is, let me break it down for you. Number 3. Nick Fury. While Nick Fury does look very different in modern day comics in comparison to classic comics, it is important to note that technically these are 2 different characters. Well, technically these are kinda like 3 different characters. Or 4 different characters. There's a lot of characters. The version of Nick Fury we saw in the MCU was actually inspired by the version of the character from the Ultimate Universe, who, fun fact, was also inspired in terms of appearances by Samuel L. Jackson, the very man who would end up playing him. In fact, a lot of the MCU characterization and even stories are inspired by the Ultimate Universe, the alternate reality of 1610, and the stories that went on there. The original Nick Fury of Earth 616 was actually a white man, but he would inevitably be replaced by a 1610 inspired alternate Fury after the original Nick Fury of 616 ended up kind of being transformed into a Watcher. The 1610 version of Fury and Samuel L. Jackson's take on the character would then be adapted for Earth 616, the main comic book continuity, and that's how we would get Nick Fury Jr., who is the son of the original Nick Fury from the comics and looks a lot like Jackson's 1610 inspired version from the MCU. See what I mean? There's lots of Nick Furies. People are like, Nick Fury changed, and I'm like, Nick Fury didn't change, there's just a lot of characters that came together. Number 2. Beast. Beast is one character that has gone through a massive amount of change since we first met Hank McCoy, the lovable vocabularian, scientist, and the X-Men's most bouncy team member, Beast. Back then, Hank was just a relatively large man with enormous feet and enormous hands, but his mutation continued to progress long after that first appearance, changing when he ended up forced to take a serum that he had created based around the hormone that causes mutation. As such, he mutated even farther, which became permanent after he didn't take the antidote quickly enough to thereafter revert the effects. This meant that Hank was now permanently even more muscular, agile, and now completely covered head to toe in gray fur. From there, his fur would become more blue, and over the years his appearance has become borderline lion-like or even kind of cat-like at times. Number 1. Star-Lord. Considering how much Peter Quill has changed with each era of comics, it could be hard for fans to recognize him in modern day. Once again, his appearance and power levels have changed so much. In his initial appearance compared to his modern look, he's basically unrecognizable. And if we go even farther back to the Peter Jason Quill of the 1970s, the Star-Lord of Earth 791 now, he is completely different. It should be noted though that shortly after the main continuity version was introduced in Thanos issue number 8, which came out in 2004, he was shortly after pretty radically changed when he appeared a few years later in Annihilation Conquest from 2007 to 2008, which is pretty much the version of Quill roughly that we have today. although even then, he's still changed quite a bit. Quill more recently in the comics returned from Marinus, an extra-dimensional world where he lived unaging with his friends, partners, and his lovers, Mors and Aradia, for hundreds of years. He came back even more powerful than before he had left, and ended up joining forces once more with the Guardians of the Galaxy to defend the cosmos against the return of the Dark Olympians. Number 10. Storm. Storm has had many different looks throughout the years, and depending on which era of Storm you are most familiar with, you might not recognize her right away when it comes to her appearances in modern day comics. When I think of Storm, one of the most iconic looks I think of is her very different 80s punk rocker look, where she's sporting a bright white mohawk. For me, this look is still one of the first ones that I think of even today. Even if you go back to her first appearance, she looks pretty different in comparison even to the 80s look. The cool thing about the modern day Storm look is that it seems to sort of incorporate all of these looks that have come before while also being quite unique. It's an homage to the past while not discounting the very real possibility of a grander future. That's actually what I like when it comes to a lot of the X-Men's updated looks. It's all about acknowledging the past while also using said past to fuel and motivate the future. Storm's initial appearance, her 80s look, and of course the now. Number 9. Venom. You wouldn't recognize Venom today compared to his 90s appearance either. For one, Venom initially appeared as a villain and therefore not only looked different but also acted quite differently. And now if we're talking about hosts that we associate with Venom, they're also pretty different in terms of their appearance. Currently, the Venom symbiote is teamed up with Eddie Brock's son, Dylan Brock. Oh yeah, if you've been out of comics for a while, Eddie Brock also has a son now. Dylan is actually Anne and Eddie's son, with a little mix-in of Venom as well, who was also there when he was conceived. And if we're talking about Venom in terms of Eddie Brock, you might not recognize him either. He's aged considerably as a result of him becoming the new King in Black following that King in Black event where Null was defeated and Eddie took his place. That was Venom and Eddie Brock then, and that is who Venom is attached to now, and what Eddie looks like now. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists like it where we talk about all of the changes in comics, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Echo. Echo is Maya Lopez. When she first appeared, she was a villain who didn't even know that she was a villain in the story. She ended up fighting against Daredevil after being misled and made to believe that he was the one responsible for killing her father. She wasn't really a villain though, she was just like a misguided person. Echo's really, I think, always been a hero deep down. When we first see her, she wears bandages on her arms, possibly an allusion to her one-woman dance show, which is actually based on her life, which was all about how she felt like an Echo. Also, yes, there are many things that Echo is skilled at because her power is like Taskmaster's. She can acquire a physical skill simply by watching it, so she's not just an amazing fighter and martial artist, but she's also a great dancer too. Echo currently in the comics has shown up in the Avengers. She is now the new Phoenix in the comics, having won the opportunity and burden of being bonded with the Phoenix Force during the Phoenix tournament. In fact, Maya in the tournament didn't actually win, but instead was chosen because she had lost the most. The Phoenix Force was looking for a fallen champion apparently, not a big time winner. Echo as the Phoenix looks quite different than her initial appearance, no? I think it's like the Phoenix Flames for me. She still has those bandages though, and she's still got her face paint with her hand. Number 7. Iceman. When Iceman originally came on the scene, he had a very different look. If we go back to his first appearance in X-Men issue number 1, he was actually more like a snowman than an Iceman. Iceman in his early days wasn't quite as frozen solid and was more like an anthropomorphic but faceless snowman in battle. He didn't wear a trademark X-Men uniform, but he did put on his little black booties, which were kind of like, I guess, X-Men trademark uniform booties, because they're black and yellow, and there was a lot of black and yellow coloring with those original uniforms. This meant that Iceman was always the one who had to help Angel get dressed, as Warren had to deal with his wings, both unbinding them and then of course fitting them through his uniform holes, I imagine. We'd later learn in Marvel's Voices Pride from 2021 that Bobby was actually pretty happy to help, as he had a bit of a crush on Warren back in the day. Iceman since then has had a major glow up and appears to look like an ice prince in modern day comics. He even has cool spiky pauldrons. Spiky pauldrons. He's also had a glow up in terms of his powers too. Woo! Number 6. Hulkling. Hulkling is another hero who looks pretty different from his first appearance. He used to have a bunch of ear piercings, but I guess he can shapeshift, so it was easy for him to close them all up. I guess he was just like, I'm not into it now, and they're gone. Hulkling was much more gruff looking, I'd say, in his first appearance with the Young Avengers. However, he also had the name Hulkling. I mean, he still has that name, but I know that name has nothing to do really with the Hulk, but still, in his original appearance, he's big, he's green, and he's kind of like the Young Avengers' own version of that character, because, you know, everyone's kind of mirroring someone. Though to be fair, Teddy Altman is very much his own character and his own person, like many of the other Young Avengers. Currently in the comics, Hulkling isn't just a hero, but is also the Emperor of the Skrull/Kree Alliance, the Skree Alliance if you like, and this new role has also dramatically changed his overall outfit and appearance. He looks super cute now, not that he didn't before, of course, he's just a different kind of cute now than he was before. Also, he has totally different hair. His hair now is blonde. It was black, but also shapeshifter, you know what I mean? Number 5. Dazzler. Alison Blair has had a ton of different looks over the years, and there have been countless points in her history when you may have not recognized her. If you've been invested in modern comics for some time, then Alison's current outfit is Dazzler, which she also sported in Way of X issue number 3, the morning after the Hellfire Gala, will likely be recognizable to you. However, if the last time you saw her was in, you know, her own solo series back in the 80s, then you might be confused as to even who this character is. And if you saw her back in 2015 and were familiar with either the present or past appearances of Dazzler, or if you're familiar with that Dazzler, I really doubt that you would recognize her in the present day. There's many times when you'd be like, who is that, depending on which Dazzler you know. There has been a tendency to try and have Alison change with music trends, instead of keeping her in her somewhat, I guess, outdated disco roots. But personally, I think disco can still be a valid genre today. I still love disco, and I'd love to see her even return to that iconic silver jumpsuit. I like that Dazzler's had so many different looks, that's crazy. Number 4. Professor X. When we think of Professor X, usually a lot of us probably reflect back to his look in the 90s animated series. In fact, many X-Men fans who have seen Professor X recently would probably wonder just who they're even looking at. If you are more familiar with his appearance in the 90s, both in the animated series and in the comics, the modern Professor X might throw you for a loop. Currently, Professor X is able to walk again and happens to be sporting not a suit and, you know, a blanket on his lap, but instead an all-black skin-tight one piece. Also, he always wears Cerebro now, obscuring his recognizable face and his bald head. But yeah, that was Professor X then, and this is him now. Number 3. Nature Girl. Nature Girl is amazing. She's one of my favorite of the newer mutants to come out, and recently she has become a lot more metal, both in approach and in her appearance. Nature Girl can basically commune with nature, which often means she can encourage animals to help her, and they actually seem to feel within Nature Girl a kindred spirit. So there's a lot of empathy going on there between both sides. More recently in the X-Men Unlimited Infinity comics, we saw that Nature Girl has been in a constant state of depression and duress, feeling the pain that all nature is currently feeling due to humans polluting and just generally mucking up the planet and its natural and carefully balanced ecosystems. This forced Nature Girl to go on an adventure to fight for what she believes in, which resulted in her kind of accidentally killing someone and then losing all of her hair, just sporting her antlers as she turned to the dark side and took on oiling operations, aiming to destroy them and anyone who wouldn't renounce their loyalty to them. This is not your friendly neighborhood Nature Girl, that's for sure. Nature Girl then, Nature Girl now. I love her new dark look though. I love both versions of Nature Girl. I think Nature Girl's awesome. Number 2. Captain Britain, or more specifically Betsy Braddock. Whether we're looking at things from the point of view as the hero mantle of Captain Britain, or looking at it from the character viewpoint of Betsy Braddock, either way, Betsy is looking pretty different now. For a good amount of time in the comics, Betsy was known for looking just like Quanon, because, well, she was kind of in Quanon's body, or they were kind of fused together at one point. Fortunately, she has now been restored to her own body, freeing Quanon and allowing Quanon to take up the Psylocke mantle. Betsy then went on to become the new Captain Britain in her brother Brian Braddock's place after he was ensorcelled by Morgan Le Fay, becoming her new Dark Knight. It was up to Betsy at that point to take Brian's amulet and become the new Captain Britain until Brian could be saved. Betsy has been shattered and managed to return and is still known as Captain Britain currently differently. Even though Brian also got free, but then Brian was like, you take it, I'm good, I'm gonna do other stuff. You don't have a lot going on right now, Betsy, so take a thing and then make it your own thing. I like it. Number 1. Captain Kate. Even Kitty Pryde's name has shifted somewhat. She's been known by a few different names in the comics: Shadowcat, Sprite, Kitty Pryde. Now, however, she prefers if you just call her Kate. Captain Kate is the Red Queen of the Hellfire Trading Company, and typically dresses in red as such. But not only that, she also typically dresses kind of piratey now. I personally love it. This is because Kate is now also the leader of the Marauders, who have reclaimed this one villainous name and are basically a pirate crew who sail the seas, bringing those mutants to Krakoa who want to be there, but who for one reason or another can't get there. They also help deliver and intercept shipments of goods as necessary. So the whole look really fits with what Kate is up to currently in the comics, but it is very different from her original or even her past looks. Kate before, Kate now. Although I will say that original outfit that she's wearing with like the red vest and like the stripy shirt, I was like, is there already like pirate vibes that were kind of carried over here? I don't know.
Coming in at number 10, we have Namor the Submariner. Now, if you just look at his record on paper, Namor has a pretty villainous track record. A half mutant and half Atlantean warrior, he's constantly fighting the Fantastic Four, frequently fighting the Avengers, and has occasionally kidnapped the Invisible Woman at least once or twice. However, as leader of the Atlantean people, many of these conflicts only came about as Namor sought to do what was best for his followers and countrymen, and has in recent years become an ally to the Avengers, the Defenders, the Illuminati, and many other superhero groups. Just as long as you don't do anything to harm Atlantis, Namor can be an incredibly useful and powerful friend to have in your corner. At number 9, we have the beloved vampire killer known as Blade. Born as a human-vampire hybrid named Eric Brooks, Blade has all of the powers of a Marvel Universe vampire with nearly none of the negative side effects. He possesses superhuman strength and speed, with all of his senses heightened to make him a perfect predator while being immune to damage from sunlight, silver, or holy artifacts that would instantly turn a regular vampire powerless. While he does still need the nutrients from fresh human blood to prevent himself from losing control of his hunger, Blade often uses a special serum as opposed to actually draining any humans. With so many strengths and so little weaknesses, Blade is definitely a blood-sucking force to be reckoned with. Coming in at number 8, we have Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. Now, the Punisher obviously fits the bill as an anti-hero, but is he really one of the most powerful? Well, despite his lack of actual superhuman abilities, the Punisher is considered to be at the absolute peak of non-enhanced human performance, with a long military history and years of physical combat training. However, the truly most terrifying thing about the Punisher is his dedication to his cause. While other heroes may shy away from violence and especially murder, the Punisher has no such qualms. And the fear that the Marvel Universe's villains feel towards a hero that's willing to get as dirty as they are, that's some pretty intense stuff and definitely deserving of a spot on this list. At number 7, we have Johnny Blaze, aka the Fiery Ghost Rider. After Johnny made a deal with the villain Mephisto, a demon that just loves to try and steal the souls and happiness of various superheroes for some reason, he became the Ghost Rider, capable of combining his form with that of a spirit of vengeance known as Zarathos. Completely immune to any sort of physical attack unless it was made by a weapon of angelic origin, Johnny is able to manipulate and control Hellfire, one of the most dangerous substances in the entire Marvel Universe that burns not only physical objects, but the soul or essence of them as well. While he's veered towards the dark side with his hellish abilities several times over the years, Johnny overall strives towards redemption and using his demonic powers for something at least slightly close to good. Coming in at number 6, we're gonna have to go with the famous, or should I say, infamous Deadpool. Originally a villain for the X-Force, Deadpool has over the years turned into a charming and fourth wall breaking anti-hero that's always trying to do some form of good, but sometimes shows it in some pretty odd and violent ways. However, the most notable aspect of Deadpool's powers and what makes him so powerful is his sheer inability to die. No matter how many times you stab him, shoot him, or chop some bits off, Deadpool will always bounce back with at least a couple of bad jokes. Add in his not insignificant skill with all manner of firearms and weaponry, and you've got an explosive anti-hero that you wouldn't want to mess with. Coming in at number 5, we've got Loki. And while he may not be the Crown Prince of Asgard, he's definitely the Crown Prince of changing allegiances. While Loki's motivations and goals have changed frequently over his vast history, with the only consistent characterization being that of a wild card, his strength and the level of his powers has maintained a particularly high quality. Combining the strengths of both his frost giant genetics and his Asgardian upbringing, Loki would be formidable even without his mastery of magic and deception, showing that power isn't just about lifting heavy things or swinging a magical hammer, but can be just as effective scheming behind the scenes. Plus, you know, being as handsome as Tom Hiddleston probably doesn't hurt. Coming in at number 4 is the underrated hero, the Sentry, an expert on being torn between good and evil. While I've spoken before on this channel about the Sentry being one of the most physically powerful beings in the entire Marvel multiverse, the most interesting aspect of his powers is his manifestation of the Void, an equally powerful dark version of his Power of a Million Suns based abilities. With the Void and the Sentry actually being two halves of the same person, and their internal struggle being so devastating as to put the entire world at risk, the Sentry has actually had the world's memory of him wiped on several occasions, just to prevent the Void's powers from being abused. At number 3, we have the Scarlet Witch, also known as Wanda Maximoff. Originally believing herself to be the mutant daughter of Magneto, Wanda is in reality one of the most powerful magic wielders in the Marvel multiverse, and a conduit for chaos magic that allows her to rewrite reality to her will. While Wanda may have been one of the most notable Avengers for a time, she's also struggled with her powers during events that wiped mutants off the face of the earth and brought her own children into existence through willpower alone. No matter what reality-changing adventures she's caught up in, Wanda Maximoff will always be one of the most powerful beings in the entire Marvel Universe. Coming in at number 2, we've got the character that personally first pops up when I think of the word anti-hero, with the iconic Venom. From Spider-Man's edgier looking costume to a bulky web-slinging supervillain to the lethal protector of San Francisco, Venom has held more jobs over the years than I have, which is honestly saying a lot. But with the recent defeat of the dark symbiote god known as Null, Venom has become the leader of the symbiotes and thus has one of the most unstoppable armies in the entire Marvel multiverse at his beck and call. Let's hope that Venom keeps on leaning on the hero part of anti-hero, because otherwise this guy would be a serious problem for the rest of the universe. And finally, coming in at the number 1 spot, we have the leader of the Brotherhood of Mutants and the master of magnetism, Magneto. While some may know him as the most notable villain the X-Men have ever faced, labeling Magneto as solely a villain is simplifying his tragic story far too much. Having rejoined with Professor X in recent years and been a major contributor to the new mutant home island of Krakoa, Magneto's dedication to the mutant race is only dwarfed by the powers he possesses. Capable of altering the very magnetic fields that hold the universe together, Magneto's abilities go far beyond the he can control metal simplification that his name seems to suggest. Magneto was recently able to help terraform the entire planet of Mars, and the version of him from the Marvel Ultimate Universe was even able to nearly single-handedly wipe out humanity himself just by reversing the planet's polarity. AKA, he's definitely more powerful than something you'd usually associate with sticking to your refrigerator.
Number 10, Strife. Strife is a pretty weird dude, especially as he's the exact staple of an evil clone. You know when people tell you they have an evil clone and it wasn't them, but often in stories no one believes them? This is actually what Strife is for Cable. Deadpool actually tried using that line once, and in fact it was actually true at the time, and people didn't believe him either. Don't worry, Cable. Strife has been mistaken for Cable on multiple occasions. When Strife shot Professor X, everyone wrongly thought that it was Cable, not yet knowing that Cable had an evil clone. Strife has also attempted to impersonate Cable before, trying to act as Hope's father during the events of Messiah War. All in all, Strife is kinda just an evil weirdo who also happens to be a lot more powerful than Cable, as he doesn't suffer from the techno-organic virus like the original Nathan Christopher Summers does. Strife is also the son of Apocalypse, which of course instantly makes him pretty weird and pretty evil. Number 9. Joseph. Joseph is the younger mutant clone of former villain and current anti-hero Magneto, who is also known for being one of the most powerful mutants besides. Joseph initially started out as an anti-hero himself. He was created by Astra, who was actually retconned to be Magneto's first recruit for his Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Astra hoped the clone would be able to kill Magneto, but her plan failed, and Joseph ended up lost and without his memories. Unable to remember who he was, those who took him in believed him to be an amnesiac Magneto, despite the fact that he seemed much younger than the villain. Initially, Joseph sacrificed himself to save the world from Magneto, but he would later be brought back by Astra, only to become a villain and a new leader of his own Brotherhood. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and like I said you want more clones, you know what to do. Hit that like button, comment down below, and why not share for your friends that also love clones. Number 8. Mr. Sinister's Chimera. Granted, this at least wasn't as weird as I thought it could be. I was expecting it to get a lot weirder. Still, this clone was startling enough that the Hellions, specifically Empath, were forced to take it down. As was alluded to in Incoming, Sinister was hell-bent on creating a super powerful mutant that would be a Chimera, a blend of multiple genes. Even though he was technically sworn as a member of the Quiet Council and in general as a citizen of Krakoa to perform no more cloning. But you know Nathaniel Sinister's got a clone. Hence, in the Hellions issue number 15, we finally got to meet Mr. Sinister's newest creation and his pride and joy. This Chimera was a blend of Sinister and his Iraqi rival Tarn the Uncaring, which I gotta say is a pretty weird yet epically powerful combo, making his Chimera one of the most powerful mutants out there and an Omega level mutant clone. Number 7. Kane Parker. Kane was a defective clone of Peter Parker, one of the multiple created by the villain Jackal. Kane, unlike clone Ben Reilly though, was seen as being more villainous, or at least more questionable when it came to his methods. Kane has always been known for having less of a moral compass and is also often associated with a more moody look with his long flowing locks. His signature ability is the Mark of Kane, which is actually the same ability that allows Spider-Man to wall crawl. For Kane though, the little spider-like hooks on his hands are more abrasive, which means that he can actually lay his hands on someone and use them to burn his victims. It's like the opposite of laying hands in D&D. Number 6. Linda the Duck. You guessed right, even Howard the Duck has a clone in the Marvel Universe. Linda the Duck was actually created along with another character's female version. The Collector is the one responsible for her creation, apparently making her for reproductive and potentially breeding purposes. That's a whole can of worms that I really don't want to open up on the internet, but I suppose you could if you so chose. Linda would end up escaping the Collector and traveling back in time to before she ever existed or before she ever escaped, meaning that no one was looking for her at that time, so she could live her life safely. A pretty smart plan for staying hidden and operating under the radar. Number 5. Shocket Raccoon. Somehow Linda's partner in crime, Shocket Raccoon, is an even more surprising clone to me. Shocket Raccoon is, you guessed it, the female clone version of Rocket Raccoon. She was also created for reproductive, potentially breeding purposes. Shocket, along with Linda, also escaped the Collector's collection after being made by Tanalir Tivan. However, it was only due to assistance from the Gatherer D3X that they even got out at all. Gatherer D3X was instructed to put them back into cryogenic stasis, but actually rebelled against his master and decided to escape alongside Shocket and Linda. Sadly, it wouldn't work out too well for him in the end, but Shocket and Linda are still probably good. They might be in another universe though now. Number 4. Kindred. In a masterful turn of events, it was revealed that Kindred's true identity was actually more complicated than just being Harry Osborne. Instead, Kindred was really two different people, Gabriel and Sarah Stacy, the illegitimate children of Norman Osborn and Gwen Stacy. Dun dun dun! But there was even an added twist on that reveal. I know, how shocking. Gabriel and Sarah, it turns out, were actually creations of Harry Osborne. He combined his father and Gwen's DNA to make the two clones and implanted memories in Mary Jane Watson's and Norman Osborn's minds to make them think that the twins were really Norman and Gwen's biological offspring, making them think that Norman had slept with Gwen and that she had given birth to the twins secretly in France. However, this was not at all true, it turns out, and the twins were actually just created by Harry to torment both his father and his old friend, Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Old friend slash rival. That's right, they retconned the retcon and I am so happy about it. These clones might be weird and ultimately degenerate pretty quick, but I'm really happy that they are weird clones and that the relationship between Norman and Gwen was simply an illusion. Thank you Mysterio, thank you Harry, thank you Nick Spencer. Number 3. Harry Osborne. And surprisingly, Kindred wasn't even the weirdest clone for me, involved in the most recent Spider-Man plot, which wraps up Nick Spencer's run on The Amazing Spider-Man. Harry Osborne also ends up having a clone, and it's revealed that the version of him that was locked up this whole time is the real Harry. Not the real Harry really, but a clone. We'll get to that in a minute. The Harry that we thought was Kindred was actually Gabriel and Sarah using chameleon disguise tech to impersonate Harry. However, it turns out this actual Harry isn't, well, actually Harry, who remains dead in the comics. He's actually a clone who was created by Norman after the death of his son, which it turns out he just couldn't live with. He made it appear as though Harry had actually survived due to him being exposed to the Goblin Serum. In the end, Harry realizes that he's a clone, coming to terms with the fact that he was the one behind the plot to create Gabriel and Sarah in order to hurt both Norman and Peter. He chooses to make amends and ultimately sacrifices himself, but in the end, at least he gets closure for doing so, finally able to confess his misdeeds and redeem himself once and for all. Bye, Harry clone, you will be missed. Number 2. Captain Zelandia. Captain Zelandia is the really messed up mutated clone of Steve Rogers, and he's not the only mutated clone that Arnim Zola goes on to create in Dimension Z, or Dimension Z depending on where you're watching. He claims to have all the memories of Captain America, and while beating him up uses these memories to torment Steve, trying to plant seeds of self-doubt in regards to Rogers' heroic beliefs and mission. Captain Zelandia would also go on to become the leader of the Unvengers team as well, which is a team that also features other messed up clones of other main Avengers team members. Look under your seat! Everyone gets a mutated clone. You get one, and you, and you! Mutated clones for everybody. Number 1. Ian Rogers. Ian is a clone of both Arnim Zola and Steve Rogers. He's like Captain Zola's clone baby, I guess. He was initially created by Arnim Zola in Dimension Z, which is where Cap found the test tube baby and rescued him. Cap would spend years trapped in that dimension with Ian and would kind of raise him as his own son. However, Ian would be kidnapped by Zola and ultimately brainwashed against Cap. Oh no! Cap would then have to help dismantle this brainwashing to free Ian once more from Zola's grasp and his influence. And really, everything involving Ian gets even weirder from there. He would eventually go on to take up the name Nomad and for a time would become the ally and partner of Sam Wilson's Captain America. Number 10. Punisher 2099. Punisher 2099 is Jacob Gallows. He hails from the alternate dystopian future of Earth 928, where mega corporations pretty much own and run everything on planet Earth. Jacob himself is a police officer working for the Public Eye, a privatized police force owned and operated by Alchemax. After suffering an injustice with his brother, sister-in-law, and mother being killed after a hit was put on them by Kron Stone, the son of Alchemax's CEO, Jake decided to take matters into his own hands. Finding the war journal of the Punisher of years before, he was inspired to become a vigilante all his own, and ended up carrying on Frank Castle's work and title, but with the aid of future technology and tracking. Punisher 2099 would eventually end up with a bionic arm, which also made him an even better fighter than he was previously, boosting his skills. Number 9. Deathlock Prime. There have been a few different versions of Deathlock that we've seen throughout the years. All of them have been pretty futuristic in the sense that they are cyborgs, who also generally come equipped with advanced weaponry. But at least one Deathlock is actually also hailed from the future. The one I'm talking about here is Deathlock Prime, who came from the alternate future of Earth 10511, a reality where Roxxon, typically the corporation behind the creation of Deathlocks in most series, have taken over the entire planet Earth. Deathlocks were employed in this future in a sort of Terminator-esque Skynet way to squash the resistance by traveling back in time and killing the enemies of Roxxon to prevent any of them from rising up in the future. Gotta love that Skynet ploy. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn more about future superheroes, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Iron Lad. Iron Lad is a hard one to rank because he's actually a Mortis and therefore also Kang the Conqueror, two very powerful villains in the Marvel Universe who often are known for traveling through time and assuming new identities throughout the years. However, because many of his other identities are considered villainous, we're going to actually rank Iron Lad based on what he was capable of more as Iron Lad, which is why he's a little lower on our list in comparison to if I was ranking him as, you know, Kang. Iron Lad was one of the original members of the Young Avengers, but later learned that he was destined to become the villain known as Kang over time, as he continued to try and set up his future to be perfect. Iron Lad, aka Nathaniel Richards, rebelled against his future self, however, killing Kang and attempting to alter his own future. However, Iron Lad's fate was not so easy to beat, and he would eventually end up working with and becoming his future villainous selves. Selves. There's multiple of them. Selves. Number 7. Captain America 3099. Captain America 3099 is one of the uniforms you can get in Marvel Future Fight, a mobile dungeon crawler style action RPG game set in the Marvel Universe. While we've been to 2099 in the comics, 3099 offers an even more futuristic look at some of our favorite heroes. Cap's 3099 uniform includes a digital, still physical, but appearing kinda holographic, if that makes sense, shield. Cap also sports some interesting pieces of armor, including boots, a chest plate, and pauldrons that also look super futuristic with highlights of glowing neon blue light inlaid into them. This uniform showed up earlier last year and can be unlocked by playing through story mode for the 3rd time, I believe. I think you can still unlock it that way. Number 6. Spider-Man 2099. Spider-Man 2099 is Miguel O'Hara. He hails from the alternate reality belonging to 2099, or really one of the 2099 realities really, Earth 928. In 2099, Miguel becomes Spider-Man as a result of an experimental drug he was pressured to work on as a brilliant geneticist employed by Alchemax. The has so far killed a man who he tested it on, which is why Miguel actually tries to leave, but Miguel was forced to try it himself after trying to leave the company, only for his boss to sneak a highly addictive hallucinogenic into his drink that only Alchemax made. Miguel miraculously survived the transformative process, despite the experiment being additionally sabotaged in an attempt to kill him. In the end, Miguel was left with a power set similar to the Spider-Man of the past and ended up becoming the Spider-Man of the future. Since his introduction, Miguel O'Hara has become a huge fan favorite and has even made his way over to Earth 616 for a few team-ups with main continuity Spider-Man Peter Parker. Number 5. Bishop. Bishop is a mutant from an alternate dystopian future, which is kind of a thing with mutants, if you haven't already noticed that before. There are a lot of mutants who come from the future, specifically various different dystopian futures. Lucas Bishop in his future was a mutant who joined up with the XSE in his timeline, known as the Xavier Security Enforcers. Bishop's powers allow him to absorb almost any type of energy, including kinetic energy, even energy from a snowfall, store up said energy, and disperse it, using it to boost or heal himself or to fire concussive blasts at his opponents. Number 4. All-Father Doom. In the year 2099, Dr. Doom becomes a hero. There were actually 2 Dooms who appeared, and initially it seemed like the Victor Von Doom that we'd come to know may not actually be the true Doom. After all, he was younger and unscarred at his first appearance. However, this would actually be explained in time, and it would be revealed that the other, more villainous Doom was a brainwashed imposter, Eric Czerny, in truth. In fact, there weren't even just 2 Dooms. There were kind of 3 if you're counting Tiger Wilde, a cyborg who became dictator of Latveria. He didn't necessarily go by the name Dr. Doom, but definitely had a kind of Doom vibe going on with his metal cyborg self and being a tyrannical ruler of Latveria. The real Doom ended up being the last one standing in the end and used his power for good. True, he does set out to conquer the United States, but this is actually a good thing as he aims to do so for heroic reasons, wanting to take down the mega corporations who basically now control all aspects of the nation and its civilians' lives in the future. He even brings back S.H.I.E.L.D., which is pretty good, I think. Number 3. Cable. Probably one of the most powerful superheroes out there, period, is Cable. Cable is little baby Nathaniel Christopher Charles Summers, initially referred to as Baby Christopher in the comics, all grown up. Cable actually goes to the future and then comes back to the past after having a roller coaster of a life. He is the biological son of Scott Summers, aka Cyclops, and Madeline Pryor, aka the Goblin Queen, and also Jean Grey's clone. Jean herself is also a mother to Cable, thinking of him as her own son and having memories implanted in her mind of his childhood. So to Jean, she also is his mom, and to Cable, Jean is also his mom too. Being the child of such powerful mutants means that Cable himself is an immensely powerful telepath and telekinetic, despite the fact that he has to focus a lot of his mental strength on fending off the techno-organic virus, which he was infected with. He's also an immensely skilled combatant capable of time travel. Number 2. Cosmic Ghost Rider. Cosmic Ghost Rider comes to us from a very bleak future where Thanos ends up winning the day. So many bleak futures in Marvel. And I mean Thanos really wins the day, by the way, like in an awful way. Cosmic Ghost Rider was once Frank Castle, who ended up becoming a spirit of vengeance but returned to Earth too late, after everyone was dead and there was basically nothing left to avenge. Driven insane by years of loneliness, he ended up becoming a herald of Galactus and being granted the power Cosmic in a final bid to try and defeat Thanos. When this failed, he joined the Tyrant himself and became his own herald, cause I mean what else are you gonna do? However, this reality was wiped from existence when a past version of Thanos met his older self, who had destroyed almost everything in the galaxy at that point, King Thanos. Younger Thanos found him pretty pathetic and vowed to never become him, returning home and causing King Thanos' reality to crumble, and King Thanos to never have existed. However, Cosmic Ghost Rider would be given a place in Valhalla, and from there be given the chance to return to the world of the living by Odin himself, who sensed that he was unhappy in Valhalla. Cosmic Ghost Rider is not only super powerful at this point, but has also been around since the beginning of Marvel continuity now, having tons of knowledge about the universe as he ultimately decided to sit back and watch it all unfold, knowing that avoiding its demise was pretty much inevitable, because he already tried that. Number 1. Prestige. When it comes to Jean Grey and Cyclops, they really have more alternate or future kids than they do main continuity ones. Rachel Summers, aka Prestige, being no exception here. She hails from the alternate dystopian future belonging to Earth 811, where she is the daughter of her own reality's version of Jean and Scott. Although oddly enough, on Earth 616, she does pretty much also think of the main continuity versions of her parents as her true parents as well, which I guess in a way they sort of are, it's just they didn't end up going down the path that leads to Earth 811. Earth 811 is the Days of Future Past reality to give you an idea of just how dystopian we're talking about here. Rachel is even more powerful than her brother from a different reality, Cable. She also has been a host for the Phoenix Force and has better control and use of her abilities and powers. She also doesn't have the techno-organic virus distracting her and eating away at some of her power, meaning that she operates almost always at full power levels, which is pretty intense because Rachel's really powerful. Also, I dare everyone to go back and now count how many times I said dystopian future in this video. I feel like I said that a lot.
Coming in number 10, we've got Wasp. Janet Van Dyne, synonymous with stinging insects across the world. She's also known for infecting important individuals and wreaking plenty of havoc. We're not really sure how or when she got infected, but that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. On Earth 2149, the zombie plague spread quickly, and she had a lot to do with it. Hero zombification doesn't turn the supers into shambling, brainless creatures like so many other apocalypses do. It instills them with a thirst for blood, a hunger for flesh, and the ability to create even more zombies. So of course, Wasp went to find her husband, Henry Pym, aka Giant Man. We'll come back to that in a bit. After infecting Pym, they got right down to business. She called a false Avengers Assemble and picked off the folks who ended up showing up, eventually discovering that Pym was hiding T'Challa from her. Overcome by zombie hunger, she attacked Pym but was decapitated. Still alive, mind you, but without a body to call her own. So for a while, Wasp remained just a head, traveling through the universe in what can simply be called a jar. Eventually, she managed to procure a cybernetic body for her zombie dome. Absolutely wild. Coming in number 9, we've got Red Skull. A big part of one of the zombie stories was the fight against, and then upon, Galactus. Like, usually his appearance would be an enormous one, with all sorts of supers having to put it all on the line to put an end to his plans. In Zombies though, Galactus falls to the undead heroes and villains rather quickly. Using a crazy gun that shot beams of pure concentrated energy, Galactus was cut down promptly. This wasn't the end of it though, as hero and villain zombies descended upon the enormous corpse to feed. These two groups fought it out to earn the meal, which brought Captain, or Colonel in this case, America and Red Skull face to face. Enemies even in the undead afterlife, eh? Usually one would expect the patriotic pummeler to win this kind of fight, but in zombies, Red Skull scoops out his foe's brain. That's it for America. Coming in number 8, we've got Wolverine. After fighting the good fight when the zombies showed up, eventually Wolverine fell and got turned into a zombie himself. Ouch. Keeping all of his classic powers but earning a brand new hunger, he's a force to be reckoned with. He plows through countless deadites with ease and then scares the Necronomicon until it begs not to be eaten. Wolverine doesn't eat books, but he does use them for TP. Oh boy. That's just the beginning of Wolverine's zombified adventure though. He sniffs out a bunch of survivors and brings a bunch of zombies together to fight Magneto. Interestingly enough, he tries to fight Silver Surfer after this, but his necrotized flesh can't hold his claws when he strikes. This doesn't make him useless though, as he still is able to literally toss Iron Man into the fight. In fact, Wolverine is still powerful enough as an undead corpse to kill Juggernaut, among other classic characters. Then he and some other zombies head to space, thinking they've already eaten all of the unsullied flesh on Earth. Coming in number 7, we've got Reed Richards. This is a universe-spanning tale of tragedy if there ever has been one. Poor Reed. He watched his children get annihilated by zombie She-Hulk and lost his mind completely. Even before he's zombified, he dives deep down the zombie rabbit hole, learning about how they function, how efficient they can be, and more. This disturbs those around him, who are shocked at how interested he is in the creatures that kill his family. In the end, he infects the remaining members of the Fantastic Four without their knowledge, and they all turn right in front of him. Then they turn him, and the zombie Fantastic Four is ready to roll. Imagine having the power to keep people alive, but instead using the research to turn your friends into zombies. The people who trusted you! Insane. Worse still, the zombie foursome finds Tony Stark and turn him into a zombie before he can get his suit on, and that opens up a whole new can of worms. Coming in number 6, we've got Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers. As if she couldn't stir up enough controversy by starring in her own movie a few years back, we've also got her piloting a long-dead Galactus towards Earth in Zombies Respawn. Folks know she's bad news as soon as they see her, as an unzombified Wolverine tells his whole squad to fall back. Too late though, as she is ready to bring the zombie apocalypse to Earth once more. All of her powers are essentially the same as they've ever been, but her mission has changed. Consume the planet many had assumed she swore to protect. Bad news all around for sure. Coming in number 5, we've got Mystique. Now this is some next level zombie intelligence right here. Mystique is known for using her shape-shifting abilities to mess things up across the board for sure, but what about when she essentially ends the world with one simple trick? Doctors hate her, that's for sure. She takes on the form of Scarlet Witch, chills with Wanda's brother Quicksilver, and turns the speedster into a zombie. Then Quicksilver decides it's a fine idea to zip all over the world at max speed, turning every other available person. That is beyond the butterfly effect. That's like the butterfly sanctuary full of freshly metamorphosed creatures effect. Coming in number 4, we've got Quicksilver. Like I just explained, this super fast freak gets turned and makes the zombie infection a global pandemic before anybody can do anything about it. You think we've witnessed the quick spread of a virus recently? Think again. Sure, planes, trains, and automobiles will eventually get the job done, but Pietro here makes it happen in seconds flat. That's gotta be a record or something. So in terms of people with the highest rate of turning others into zombies, it seems that Quicksilver ran away with the competition. Easy peasy, right? Coming in number 3, we've got Hank Pym. We mentioned him earlier in the list when discussing the deeds of his wife, but Giant Man got up to some heinous stuff while operating as a zombie. The zombies are so good at eating and infecting that they soon ruin their food supply. Some suggest exploring the universe to find other new sources of nourishment, others claim that they should be able to eat each other. That second idea falls on its face though when zombies realize that zombie meat tastes bad. However, there are plenty of fine, enterprising minds in the Marvel universe. Hank Pym is just one of those geniuses, and he comes up with a plan. Breeding and cloning humans to come up with an infinite supply of food. How wonderful. Just like factory farms, but for people. I can only imagine what kind of awful, cruel things would happen in such a facility, but here we are. It never really works out, thankfully, but still. Pym also captures and restrains T'Challa at one point, saving him for when he gets really hungry. He won't turn if all Pym does is hack off a limb or two. Coming in number 2, we've got Spider-Man. Here's a hard one to handle. Peter Parker turning into a zombie and giving up on all of the goodness in his heart. Sheesh. A lot of folks were really freaked out by the actions Spider-Man took once zombified. Like, eating the flesh of fellow heroes is a tough start, but Peter even went home and feasted on Mary Jane and Aunt May. Not cool, Peter. After one hell of a feeding frenzy on Earth, Spidey and a bunch of other heroes take to the stars, looking for more flesh to consume. This eventually results in them eating most of the food in the known universe. Is a New York slice not enough anymore? Absolutely gutted at what he's done, Spider-Man isn't exactly sure what to do. He's out here shooting webs made of veins and arteries, hungering after an infinite source of food that no longer exists. Even when he's fired into a new universe, he can't control himself. After all he's learned, that zombie virus just takes over. Sheesh. And finally at number 1, we've got the Hulk. Bruce Banner and his big green pal tend to be pretty scary on a regular day, but when zombie viruses show up, things can get really raunchy. Usually Banner finds a way to reel in his alter ego and remain pretty affable, but not Zombie Hulk. He is a crazed, destructive lunatic with nothing to lose. He'll kill and eat and kill and eat and kill and eat until there is nothing left, which is exactly what he does. The zombification does nothing to rob him of his strength either. Hell, when Thanos accuses him of being the reason every zombie is so ticked off and hungry in deep space, Zombie Hulk just destroys his head. Insane. I didn't even mention what he did to Silver Surfer's head. This is a green undead freak that you do not want to cross at all. Zombie superheroes might not be the most long-lasting and legendary iterations, but they're a whole lot of fun. And I'm sure that this upcoming What If series will touch on them at some point.